Hi, Joe. Welcome to the show. Great that you can join us. We're going to talk a little bit about wine and music.
Can I tell you the thing I'm not going to do, which is often what wine people go and do, is they do this thing of wine and music matching. And I have to confess, I've always struggled with it. I struggle with wine and food matching. I mean, broadly, you eat what you like and you drink what you like, and there are some rough general guidances, and you sort of don't go with that. But the idea that there's the perfect wine that goes with Joy Division is sort of bunkum, and you end up in these bizarre space where people say, well, of course, you've got to have it because it tastes like such and such. You go, well, that doesn't really make any sense for me at all. Where I find it much more fascinating, I think, in our everyday experience, Italians have a much greater sense. We learned this in series one, of this notion of vino della contemplazione, this sort of idea that there are certain wines which you sit and you contemplate and sort of settle with. And for drinking and listening, the two of them come closely together. And people seem to have found this in the lockdown, that we've watched everything. So now we're in a position where we sit and we drink and we think. But certain wines are better for it than others. And you want wines that, actually a bit like music, have harmony, and maybe sometimes there's an awful lot of musical analogies. The idea of sort of music rising and falling. And in many wines, if you decant them, particularly older wines, you'll find that they rise and then they sort of drift away.
Are you saying that as people drink wine, they tend to rise and then fall?
There's an element of it. There is. We know that in the history of music, some musicians very much found an awful lot of inspiration in wine. So actually the journey's often been the other way. Bach was inspired a great deal around his wine. And of course, all his works were kind of commissioned works, weren't they? And a lot of them, he would be paid in wine in some cases. Particularly, I came this year, or just when we were filming, we were in the Rhineland, and he enjoyed lots of beer and cigars, but he would like smart wines. But they were so hard to get. He would compose in return for wine, and it's reckoned that his music was inspired not just by having drunk too much, but by the nature of wines and by their limpidity and by the way that they evolved in the glass and so on. And he said, and certainly when he died, he left 2 full rooms in his house, absolutely chocked to the gunnels, full of wine that people had given him as part of writing his commissions. So often it's been the other way. Mozart, certainly, he was obsessed with drinking champagne. We often don't know what the wines were that composers liked because they've been sort of lost. But Mozart would compose very often with champagne. And his neighbour had this amazing report that he would drink champagne during the day, which sounds very louche to us, but actually it was much more in a sort of echo of the way French people were. French people used to hunt in the morning and have champagne and oysters at lunch. And that was just the way French nobility lived at that time. But he would drink at night, and his neighbour said there was this system, he would bit his keyboard playing away. And then when he ran out, he would just thump on the wall of his neighbour. And that was the signal that he needed more booze. And so the neighbour would come round and plonk a thing of wine on him. When Beethoven died, a lot of people know about Beethoven that there's this line, he said, pity, pity, it's too late. And it's often seen as being this, him talking about how, all these amazing works he could have composed have drifted away, and he'll never get to do them because he knows he's going to die. Actually, there's some historians did some work, and they reckon he was talking about his wine collection because he'd drunk, and we went to Tokai this year. People drink a lot of Tokai. Tokai Rust Ausbruch, which you get on the Neusiedlersee between Hungary and Austria, and wines like that. And they're rich, sticky, thick wines. And apparently he was pretty ill from drinking so much of these. And his doctor had said, oh, you must go and drink these lighter Rieslings from Germany. So he bought vast amounts of light, fragrant Riesling for his health. And it arrived much delayed as he was dying. And the current theory is that as this case as a wine turned up, he said, pity, pity, it's too late.
Tokai is usually regarded as a dessert wine.
It is, yes. It's a brilliant wine to sit and listen to music with, actually, because it's a half sibling of Riesling, so it's quite aromatic. It's like the string section. It's got this kind of lift to it. It's a half sibling of Chardonnay, so it has this structure. So percussion, double bass, if you like, the core of a musical composition, and it brings these two together. well, we have this acronym in wine. I'm sure there are similar things in music. In fact, I use a musical analogy, and I'm not going to shame you, but I once did, it was a quiz show, and I was asked, isn't good wine just the one that you quite like? And I remember saying, well, no, and the music is the best way of explaining it. Because if you like, wine isn't something we talk about in public, whereas, here, we're talking about music, and people talk about what makes good music good and bad music bad. There are wines that are not very good in an objective, sort of schooled sense. But you might just like them. Provençal rosé for a lot of people is a bit like that. And there are wines that are extraordinary. I just gave one away this morning. It was £92, but lots of people don't really like it because it's really big and heavy. So we have these 4 letters: balance, length, intensity, complexity. I'm sure music will have similar sort of things. So balance is that balance between acidity and fruit in wines. They should even each other out. They can be really big, they can be quite small, but they should always be in relative proportions. Length, what you're talking, that mouth-coating, textural, lingering character that you get in wines. And intensity is very orchestral. It's that sense of how accurately can you pick out the elements within a wine structure. So is it red fruits? Is it strawberries? Is it alpine strawberries? And that's like sort of how good are orchestras, or musicians generally. How focused can they be in creating, musical textures? And then complexity, which is very much a sort of jazz thing. It's the jazz element. Do you have a lot of stuff going on that slightly surprises you and takes you, to, oh, crikey, I wasn't expecting that to sort of come along just there. We used to go to this festival every year. And one year, George Melly came to play. And we'd heard that George Melly was a great fisherman. So we said, would you like to come fishing before this performance in the evening, about 7 o'clock? And there is a wine connection, because he came about 7 in the morning, because he was a really keen fisherman, and started on a bottle of scotch and went fishing. We came out over lunch. I think he polished off a bottle of wine or more, then went back with his bottle of scotch fishing. And so by this point, I was thinking he'd be pie-eyed. Went out, performed brilliantly. It was an amazing performance. They were absolutely superb. Various people walked out because he told a joke about having sex with sheep. And this was in a little village in the Yorkshire Dales, horrified. And then I went home. I was absolutely jiggered. He was on the telly, live from Leeds in a nightclub, going to do some singing there.
You've got some wines on the shelf behind you there. Is there anything you were planning on picking out for us today?
I think we're in for something like a little rosé. So what we've got here, lots of people are drinking Provençal rosés at the moment, these very dry, fragrant ones. Actually, Spain is the place to go for this kind of stuff. And Muga Rioja rosé is brilliant. So you often think of Rioja as being either these very woody whites or these, strawberries and cream reds, which are easygoing and plush. Now, this is the way to drink them. Because, have you ever come across one of these devices? So what I'll do,
now, this is something that you do a lot on the wine show. You have a section on gadgets.
We have a section on gadgets. Well, you're talking about high-end, music systems. Like, this is high-end wine drinking systems.
Right.
I'll tell you the bit of the background. This is invented by a guy called Greg Lambrecht, who is a medical devices inventor, really. He specializes, got a whole division that specializes in needles. And this is an epidural needle that's been coated in Teflon.
Okay.
Now, this is the latest model, so it's much easier to use. You get ones with clamps. So that needle's driven through the cork of the bottle there.
Okay.
So I'm going to press the button, and it'll give me...
Oh, wow.
It'll dribble out. Now, what it's doing... Let's do another one, because I want a decent glass here. What it's doing is it's injecting argon into the bottle. So that gap there has argon gas in it, which is completely inert. Well, it's inert, you don't need to say completely inert. So what I'll do, that comes out. You might be able to see there's a little hole just where the U is. I'll leave it standing up for about 5 minutes so the cork can reseal, if you like, and swell back. And I can put that back on the shelf, and it'll keep good in case of that wine for about a year, because you're only meant to drink it for a year. Okay. I've had Bordeaux under Coravin. It's called a Coravin that's 10 years. So I had a glass of it 10 years ago and a glass of it last autumn. Perfectly good condition. It had aged as a wine, but There we go. Glass of rosé. Light, fragrant, delicious.
I've actually got a wine for you.
Oh, good.
Well, there isn't
Certainly.
actually that much left, I'm afraid. But this is a wine called Rubis, which is a chocolate wine. But you can use it as well to make tiramisu. Perhaps you could pour it over some poached pears. So it's something that you can use for the dessert as well. It looks like port, but it just has the most amazing taste. And I think I'm just going to pour. Oh, I do like that sound.
You know, that sound alone makes a wine makes us perceive a wine as being 15% more expensive.
And
just
you can
that
see
sound.
it does all of the right things on the glass. So and it's absolutely delicious. So
what's called
I'm
the
going
Gibbs
to...
Marangoni effect is those legs that you get on the glass.
Yes.
The Gibbs Marangoni effect.
It's made with Spanish Tempranillo grapes with an essence of cacao. So cheers.
Cheers. Well, Tempranillo in Portugal is called Tinta Roriz. You know, that porty thing. If you make Tempranillo in the same way as you make something porty, if it's got that the extra alcohol, it's not surprising that it would have that slightly porty character about it.
Right. Right.
Chocolate and wine are famously hard to combine, which is why this is so interesting. But they're two things we really love. Port is one thing that goes very well with chocolate.
I mean, what better than having an evening of chocolate, wine, music, a decent hi-fi? I mean, it's just totally indulgent.
It's incredibly indulgent. And then you do that thing of going, oh my goodness, it's 3:00 in the morning. You know, what on earth happened there?
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. What are you going to go and drink? Now I'm going to do what I said you shouldn't do. What are you going to go and listen to whilst you're drinking your chocolate wine?
Well, look, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate you joining us. Hopefully later in the year, we might see you back in sunnier climes with the wine show again.
You definitely will.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks when we're back again. And Joe, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers.
That's a pleasure. Thanks very much.